Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. We have with us the representative of the Cyprus High Commission, Cultural Councillor Kipros Charalaμπούς. We have with us the Councillor Chris Ioannidis. We have with us the Deputy Chairman of National Federation of Cypriots in UK, Christodoulos Stylianou. Dear friends, on behalf of Paroikιακή, I would like to welcome you all on tonight's lecture on economy. We have with us a very distinguished speaker, Councillor Stήβεν Αλαμπρίτης, leader of Merton Council, the only Cypriot leader of a council and a former head of public affairs and a federation of small businesses group. I thank him very much for accepting our invitation to talk to us about the topic we believe that he's an expert on. He's an Arabipioti as well, and he proudly says that anyway all the time, so I might as well. Right. We have representatives of the Arabic Association as well here. Okay. Before I go any further, I would like also to thank the Cypriot Community Center for their hospitality. To the chair, obviously, and the management committee, and we extend our thanks to you all for being here with us tonight. Britain is facing one of the worst economic crises since the Great Depression in the 1930s. The economic policies of this government, right, is creating problems for the ordinary working individuals and, of course, for many businesses. We already had problems with the fact that the petrol prices have risen and, as a result, pushing the production cost up. That's a subsequent rise in inflation. To combat inflation, the cost of borrowing has to go up, resulting in more and more people losing their homes and more companies going under. This will create an unprecedented chain reaction for the worse. A couple of weeks ago, it was announced by the Statistical Office of this country that the economy has entered officially in a recession, with the country's gross domestic product shrinking by 0.2% in the first quarter of the year. The situation is getting from bad to worse, and the government has no answer. Let's hope that we get some answers from Mr. Alαμπρίτης tonight. Enough said. I will leave the experts to talk about the economy, but once again, I would like to thank everyone present, especially the two speakers, the speaker, Councillor Stήβεν Αλαμπρίτης.
Thank you very much, Paμπos, and thank you all for being here. And thank you to my Arabipiodis. If you want to have a go at me, they won't be pleased. And I think that's why they're here. What I intend to do today is to, yes, talk about the economy, but yesterday was the Queen's speech, or Philip's speech as they call it today. And we'll talk about the Queen's speech because that has implications for the economy. Then referred to the budget some months ago, but nevertheless another key budget by the Chancellor George Osborne. Then look at some government successes and some government failures in the last 2 years. It is difficult to be in a coalition, but you do get problems in any government, what we call mid-term problems. So they're in their second year out of 5 years, and they have got some problems. And then I'll talk about China and about Greece as well, and how we need to be mindful where Greece has come first in many regards, and why we and the European community should be more forgiving of Greece today, rather than to demonize, lambast and criticize Greece, as is the case today. I'll also touch on my visit to Istanbul, to Constantinople, where I went to see the mayor of Istanbul, Ahmet Selamet, where I wanted to learn about local authorities in Turkey as a Greek Cypriot, I was invited by the Turkish community in Merton. And as a result of that, I shall be going to see Mr. Galanos in Nicosia, who is the mayor of Amohostos. So I need to go where I need to go, where the arguments need to be made, where I can learn most. But I think you may want to hear about my visit to Istanbul and to what we like to call Konstantinopoli, but I went to Istanbul and saw the mayor of Istanbul Metropolitan Council. So, cultural councillor, councillors, guests, Bambo, thank you for the invitation. The Queen's speech, there's some criticism that the Queen's speech could have addressed the economic woes of the country. I think that's slightly unfair, but there should have been a bit more about help for industry, help for companies, and help for people in need. What there was a proper attack on directors' pay, high pay for directors. That should be levelled out. There should be good pay for successes, not good pay for failures. And over the years, including under Labour as well, we have to be fair, what's happened is that directors who have failed have been paid off with large amounts of money, and that's got to stop. So there was a bill to address directors' pay. In terms of the banks, who are primarily to blame for the woes that we went into in 2008 to 2010, many people say it was all down to the Labour government, that the Labour government bankrupted the nation. Yes, there were issues, there were problems, but also the global economic woes contributed to that. And if you look at the opposition during the years of the Labour government, either Conservative Party in particular and the Liberal Democrats, they wanted to match pound for pound the spending that the government was committed to. They didn't say in 2005 or 2006 that you're spending too much, we wouldn't spend as much. So it is important to be fair to everyone in that regard. But the banks were a huge problem. So there's a bill in the Queen's speech to split the bank's retail arm, the arm that you and I use, our current account, our savings account, our business loan accounts, our mortgage accounts, to split that function from their investment arm, what we call casino banking, trading, foreign exchange, commodities, buying goods ahead of time, buying goods behind you, in front of you, buying for 500 tons of sugar in 10 years' time. Those kinds of commodities, investments, so there will be a split. So if one has a failure, the investment side say, it will not impact on the retail side, so that the banks will be safer, and so one arm of them can fail. What happened in 2008 to 2009 is the system was such that the banks could not be allowed to collapse. Otherwise, the whole economy collapsed. So hopefully that bill will address the issue. There's a pensions bill that will make us work longer, pay more into our pension and get less out of it. Not very attractive. We work longer, we pay more in, and when we retire, we get less out of it. And that is a problem for us all, and that's why there was a strike today by the public sector, concerns about the pensions. Now, as Bambo said, I used to work in the private sector, in the Federation of Small Businesses, and there I saw the private sector in its good and its bad, and I didn't have any experience of the public sector. Now I'm the leader of a council, the London Borough of Merton, where we employ 4,000 staff, have a budget of £500 million. I can see the public sector in the way it truly is, and that is strong, and that is committed, and not very, very well paid. You've heard of the pay of chief executives of local authorities, and in my borough we have 5 out of 4,000 staff who get more than £100,000 each. Some local authorities have 20 or 30 or 50. So I think it's the 5 directors. So I see that, but I also see staff who've worked there for 20, 30, 40 years, technical staff, professional staff, and they work long hours in the public sector, and the pay is not great, but the pensions have over the years been more attractive. We have to agree that. And it's wholly unfair now to change the ball game and to take away some of their pension rights. So, but that is an area of concern that the Queen's Speech is trying to address. On banks, you should be able to switch bank more easily after the Queen's Speech. There's a regulation there that will allow you, if you want to switch bank from one to another, to switch banks more easily, whether it's a current account, a savings account, or a loan account. I think that's very, very important. The Queen's Speech also allows people to share their maternity leave. So if mum is allowed a year off for having a baby, she can take just 6 months off and give the other 6 months to dad. So it's sharing maternity leave. That may be an issue for employers, but even this government, which had a problem with overly generous employment laws, is agreed that it may be a good idea to share that leave between mums and dads. What that means is two employers will be involved in a maternity situation rather than one employer as before. There'll be the House of Lords reforms, so the House of Lords, more of them will be elected. So we have Lord Adonis, who's a Greek Cypriot. He used to be a cabinet minister. He's in the Lords, but increasingly the House of Lords reforms announced by the Queen's Speech will be elected Lords, not appointed. So the power of patronage should wane. On the EU, the Queen's Speech confirmed that the UK will not be part of the bailout, that the UK will not give money to Greece or to Spain or to France or to anyone. The UK will be out of the bailout, won't give direct money to any other country that's in trouble, may give money to the IMF, which George Osborne has done. He's given 10 billion, and we mustn't be too critical of the UK government, both in helping the IMF and in giving money to the overseas countries. Still a generous country in that regard. There was a bill to allow Croatia to join the EU, so the UK Parliament will allow Croatia to join the EU, but won't allow Croatians to come into the country. So they're going to be a bit tougher on that. So they've learnt their lesson with the Romanians and all the others. So the UK will allow Croatia to come into the EU, but not so many Croatians to come into the UK. What was not in the Queen's Speech was something that Barack Obama supported, which was gay marriages. This wasn't in the Queen's Speech by David Cameron, and that shows a little wobble on the part of David Cameron. There was some talk that would be in the Queen's Speech to allow people of same sex to get married, whether in church or civil. Obama has agreed that, and one would have expected Cameron to be first to agree, but the right wing of the Conservative Party is not happy with same-sex gay marriages, and they say that Cameron has given into them. There was nothing there about the recall of MPs. I don't know if you like your MP, if you don't like your MP. At this moment in time, you can't do anything about it until the general election. There was a proposal, if 10% of the electorate, so if 10% of the Greek Cypriot community got together in Edmonton and they didn't like Andy Love, that they could get rid of him in between the general election. Not that I want you to get rid of Andy Love. I think he's a nice MP. But there was a talk that would be in there. But you're stuck with your MPs until each general election. And there was talk that overseas aid would be looked at. This government is committed to giving 0.7% of its gross national product in overseas aid to India, to Malaysia, to Singapore, to developing countries. And there was a debate that India actually was going to send back its money, because some countries that we call developing countries are actually better off than us. But both Gordon Brown was very generous with overseas aid, but there was nothing there to cap it or to stop it. It was a campaign by the Daily Mail that why we're giving money to countries that are competing with us. India is now very, very affluent, but not all parts of India. And I don't know if you heard about the £30 billion project for a high-speed rail to Birmingham, where most Aradipkyodes are. You know, if you go to Birmingham, it's Aradipo. But it takes you currently 1.5 hours. But there was a proposal by Justin Green, the cabinet member for transport, to have a high-speed rail to Birmingham in 55 minutes. Your chips and fish and chips will still be warm, you see, on the way back, because that's what they give you, fish and chips when you go to Birmingham. So there was no proposals for high-speed rail, Justin Greening. I think that's the money just may not be there. So the Queen's speech shows you a government in two minds, a coalition government. We must always remember that David Cameron has a difficult act to play insofar as he has to clear things with Nick Clegg. Coming on to the last budget, there is a lot of criticism that didn't address, as Bumble said, the growth issues. People say that if Labour had been in, there'd be more help for businesses. So in 2008, when the economy was in some trouble, if you recall, there was the car scrappage scheme where you could hand in your old banger, your old Triumph Toledo, your Hillman Imp, your Cortina, and you could get £2,000 to buy a brand new car. That was Lord Mandelson, he introduced that. That was very helpful to the car industry. Then the Labour government then introduced the enterprise finance guarantee to give money to businesses that the government guaranteed. And so the accusation is that the last budget did very little. One thing it did do was something the Liberal Democrats wanted, was to raise the personal allowance. So next year and the year after, we can earn £10,000 before we pay income tax. At the moment, it was 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. That is help for the needy, so we need to acknowledge that. That is good. You earn more money before you start to pay tax. But then does one say, well, that's the Liberal Democrats pushing on George Osborne rather than a George Osborne idea. The Labour government introduced 50% tax for the very rich, for those who are very well off, earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's come down to 45p in the pound, and there was an expectation that would have gone to 40p, but it went to 45p. Again, Labour would have left that for longer. Was this wise when the government needs money? And on VAT, Labour would have introduced a lower VAT for the construction sector and lower the VAT. But George Osborne decided to leave it at 20% and actually to introduce it on hot takeaway food from Greggs and Bakers. VAT on hot food takeaways was introduced in the 1980s, much to the dismay of the Greek community that had fish and chip shops and so on. And so there was VAT on that. But what didn't happen at the same time was VAT on hot pies. So you have the pasty scenario today. And Sunday trading laws will be relaxed during the Olympics. And this is what George Osborne said. So the big supermarkets will open every day, 24 hours throughout the Olympics. And that will not be good for the smaller businesses who enjoy a bit of an advantage on a Sunday when the big supermarkets close at about 4 o'clock. So let's look at where the government gets its income from. The vast majority of its money comes from income tax, then national insurance, then VAT, and then it's excise, cigarettes, beer, and so on. So that's where most of its money comes from. VAT, income tax, national insurance. Corporation tax is only 10%. VAT is 20%, and 25% is income tax. That's where it gets its money from. Where does the money go? Social welfare, 200 billion. Biggest chunk of the money. Social welfare, unemployment. And that's the criticism of the government, that unemployment is going up, so that bill will go up as well. Whereas the argument is that Labour would have done more to reduce unemployment, got people into work. Another big spender is health, 130 billion. The health service, National Health Service. Education, 90 billion. defence 40 billion. So these are big sums. So the government is getting money from income tax, national insurance, that's you and me, from companies, from VAT, from beer and smoking, and then it spends it on social welfare, unemployment, council housing, health, education, defence 40 billion. And this is where one has to think whether George Osborne is right or wrong. He may be right because the government is currently spending, so I've said 40 billion on defence, the government is currently spending 46 billion on paying interest on its debt. 46 billion to pay off the debt. The other argument is that after the Second World War, we had a higher debt than this one compared to the, and we built schools, we built new hospitals. So there are arguments. When you get two economists in a room, you get 10 arguments. And so, but that's why it's interesting. So the whole debate between Labour, the opposition, Ed Miliband, and George Osborne, David Cameron, and Nick Clegg is at what pace do you try and cut back on the debt so you pay less interest on debt? So the accusation is that the government is too fast, too quick, and Labour would have done it over 2 parliaments. If Labour had gone in 2010, Labour would have done some of this difficult work, but it would have done it at a slower pace. It would have done it over 8-10 years, whereas the current administration believes that they can do it in 4 or 5 years. That is the debate. Whether they're right or wrong, we will be proved. So what's happening today in the economy? Base rates were kept at 0.5%. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. The basic rate of interest by the Bank of England is 0.5%. Repossessions are levelling, but I think that's because people are not buying houses. Unemployment is going up, especially amongst the young, which is a difficult one. Inflation is creeping up. If we look at other countries, China is doing well, Spain not so well, and I'll talk about Greece at the very end. The thing with China is it's doing very, very well. It's got more high rate taxpayers than here in this country. So there are more people in China paying more tax than in this country. But it's going up this motorway and it's growing all the time. But with growth, at some stage you have to turn. You have to turn and pause or stop or take a breather. And we don't know whether it will be able to handle that as a country. But it is at this moment in time growing too fast and taking over a lot of our industries. So, what I said about the midterm blues and governments having difficulties as they go through to the end of their lifespan. So this is the second year, going on to the third year of the administration, and the wobbles that also worry the city. When the city sees governments wobbling and not decisive, it acts, and shares plummet. So there is a correlation between a government that is not so steady. So today we hear that they ordered the wrong aircraft carriers. That's going to cost the economy £100 million. And so that is a worry. And the government the administration is keen on law and order, but there's less police, and that's a worry. The banks aren't releasing money to small businesses. They've lost a number of ministers. David Laws was the fastest minister to resign in 17 days. He was a minister for 17 days. And then Liam Fox and Chris Huhne. Universities, very tough. I've been lucky enough to get our 2 children through university under the old tuition fee system. But as you know, that's going up to £9,000. And there is a concern about youth unemployment. But what's on the horizon, before I talk about Greece and my trip to Turkey? On the horizon is some good news. That's the Olympics. Always gives a country a blip. It gives confidence, a feel-good factor. In 1966, when England won the World Cup, there was an increase in production. People were happier, they were more contented, and production went up. and the economy did well for a few months under Harold Wilson in 1966 when England won the World Cup against the Germans. In terms of people, a lot of people ask me, when will all this finish? When will we see light? When will the banks get back to normal? When will interest rates be about 2%? When will I be able to buy a house that's roughly 10% deposit or 5% deposit? When will I put up my house for sale and it goes up a bit more? When will my son and my daughter get a job after they graduate and hold on to a job and get on in the business, get in, get on and stay in? When will most people be at work? When will shops stop closing? And you've heard about Clinton Cards closing recently, although, you know, Theo Paphides, the Ryman's, is doing very, very well. So I believe that that things will improve slightly in 2015 as we come to a general election. I'm a politician. I'm cynical. We're all cynical. But 2015, there's a general election. The government will do what it can to try and improve things as much. It won't be a huge improvement, but 2015, we will see an improvement in the economy that will be not temporary, but it won't be sustainable. So 2015, new government, when you're new, when you buy a house, what you do in the first 6 months, you do it up. You knock down walls, so and you do what's uncomfortable, just get it out the way. So a new government in 2015, when there'll be a new government, it could be Mr. Cameron, it could be Mr. Miliband, it certainly won't be Nick Clegg. I think we're all sure of that. He probably won't be an MP because where his constituency is, Sheffield Hallam, is a huge university town. And the students will probably not forgive him for saying in his manifesto that he will try and scrap tuition fees or reduce them. In fact, when he got in, it went up. So in 2015, any new government will take its unpopular decisions, more tightening, more difficulties. So I believe that normality will be 2016, 2017. When we may get back to normality, where the banks give money, where jobs are there, where there's no country about to default, where the euro is strong, and then there's competition between China and America, but things are back to normal. So 2016, 2017. So there'll be some more difficult times with some good times in between. Now, just to finish off, and then I'm happy to take questions. Today in the Evening Standard, if you look at your free Evening Standard, on the front page, in any tube station or wherever you are, although it's for sale in Wimbledon, they sell it in Wimbledon. They're so affluent there. They want to buy it. They're very well off in Wimbledon. There's the beginning of the torch kindled by the Greek sun for the Olympics. So Greece, at the start, first in the Olympic Games, founder of the Olympic Games, founder of democracy. And it is sad to see the criticism of Greece. And this criticism was at a very high level, high pitch, I think, unfair. A few months ago, it's tailed off a bit. I believe it'll begin again. So Greece, the first in with the Olympic Games. But did you know, and as a leader of a council, I'm able to give speeches where I would not normally be able to give a speech. So each year, in every local authority, up and down the country, in January of each year, there is Holocaust Memorial Day to remind us about the atrocities perpetrated by the Nazis in Germany on the Jewish people throughout the whole of Europe. And when the Germans occupied Greece, after the valiant efforts of the Greek nation against the Italians, which slowed up the German push, the Germans started to pick on the Jewish community in Athens, but primarily in Thessaloniki. They wanted to round up all Greek Jews and take them to Auschwitz and to the gas chambers. The Archbishop of Greece at the time was Archbishop Damaskinos, a very brave man, and he, along with the Chief of Police for Athens, Evert, did all they could to safeguard the Greek Jews of Thessaloniki, and bishops were mandated to hide Greek Jews wherever they could, not to comply with German instructions. And this archbishop and his bishops wrote out 27,000 false baptismal certificates handed to the Greek Jews, saying that they were Greek Orthodox, to save them from the gas chambers. That was what the Greeks did. But listen to this, and this is why we need to get people like yourself and other people in positions within the British community to remind audiences about what it means to be Greek. This archbishop then created a petition amongst the artisans of Greece and wrote a letter to the German High Command urging them not to carry out the genocide of Greek Jews from Thessaloniki and from Athens. And the letter you can read in UNESCO archives. The letter read that these Greek Jews are our brothers, they are our brethren, they are our blood, and be not a Greek or be not a Jew according to the Bible. Whatever you are welcome. So he wrote this letter, and the response from the German High Command was to Damaskinos that if you do not desist from not carrying out the orders of the German High Command, you will be shot. Damaskinos wasn't afraid or frightened. He wrote back and he said, please be aware and keep to the custom. Archbishops in Greece are hung, they are not shot. And this response sort of struck the German High Command, and they allowed the Archbishop, they did not go out to shoot him. But that document is the only document evidencing opposition to the genocide whilst it was happening. There have been documents after the genocide, but whilst the genocide was happening, that letter from Archbishop Damaskinos, and if you just Google his name, Google Damaskinos Archbishop and UNESCO archives, that letter is the first and only letter showing documented evidence of opposition to the genocide, and that came from Greece. So when I hear people criticizing Greece, I get very, very angry, and that is why it's important that we get Greek MPs, Greek councillors, Greek magistrates, and Greek mayors. We have a lot of Greek mayors. Very, very, very important to bear all that in mind in terms of Greece. So it is important to be forgiving, and I think the British nation is forgiving, but some of the commentary on Greece and its economic situation I think was awful. And we need to look back to the goodness in each nation and support it, not pile in and destroy it, as it were. And so again, that is another plea, and I welcome the support of Paroikιακή for me as a leader of a council with the coverage that they give to councillors and what they do. And I know you get quite a bit of coverage as well, and the embassy as well. And I think that's very, very, very important. What's also important is that as someone within a position in public service, is that I make it known to all the community that I am that I'm interested in finding out what happens elsewhere. And so within the London Borough of Merton, the highest growing community is the Turkish community, not the Turkish Cypriot community, but the Turkish community. And what I see when I see the Turkish community in Merton, in my borough, I see the Greek community of the 60s and the 70s. They want to set up their kebab shops. They want to set up their cafes. They want to set up a community centre. They want to set up Turkish schools. They want to set up their imam. They want to have a mosque and so on. And that's what we were doing in the 60s and in the 70s. We wanted our community centre. We had one in Birmingham, our church, Apostolos Lukas, and we have plenty of churches. And that's why Britain, despite some criticism I've made, is a civilised country, a welcoming country, and a good country to come to. If I tell you that I do the citizenship ceremonies in Merton, this is the ceremonies where people get their certificate of citizenship and where they give an oath to the Queen, not to Philip, but to the Queen, and where they get a photograph with the mayor or the leader of the council or with the deputy lieutenant. And so if I get time, I do these citizenship ceremonies. So I go there and the registrar gives a talk about the ceremony, and they're sat there all very, very dressed up, very nicely. They're very keen to get their certificates, to give their oath, and to have a photo with a dignitary. And about 50, 60 people. And the registrar's from Latvia. The registrar that we appoint is from Latvia. And a Turkish couple come towards me and want a photo with the Greek Cypriot leader of the council for their mantle back home. So it is a good country, this country. It is a welcoming country in many regards. So the Turkish community is growing in Merton much higher than the Greek community. The Greek community is mainly in the affluent Wimbledon area. But the Turkish community is towards Mitcham and the Morden area, and we constantly have delegations to my borough. And I had a delegation from their Consul General, from the Turkish Consul General from Knightsbridge. He came, we visited the community, and that's when the invitation to go to Constantinople arose. And I took that up, and I went. And I was very well received by the mayor of Istanbul, very big city, the mayor of Constantinople, I know that's what we like to call it. And it was very clean, 20 million people, buzzing, very big, very, very, very busy. Their Oxford Street is 3 times the size of this Oxford Street, Taksim Square. Their bazaar is I think it's 40 streets and 6,000 shops, all under one roof. So I went there to learn about local government in Turkey, and what I also did was I had a delegation from Aradipu. Liberis, the mayor of Cyprus, also came to my borough, and I went to Aradipu and went to the Stodimarchion εκεί στην Aradipu. And so I've had the Nepalese ambassador come over to the borough. We have a Nepalese councillor. And when I was in Turkey, I was able to go to church on a Sunday, to the Patriarch church. He wasn't there, but it was very, very, very nice to go to church on Sunday. So as a result of that, I'll be going over to Cyprus to see Mr. Alexis Galanos, who I understand is the mayor of Amochostos. And I'm very, very happy to do that. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions on the economy or any other aspects of my talk. I do welcome these discussions. I learn a lot from the kind of questions that you ask, and I think it is important to be positive, but to be realistic, and that the economy will improve slightly 2015, but then there'll be some more difficult times 2016. But I think we should be back to normal in terms of the economy 2017. Thank you for listening.